Hi again, everybody. It's JPierce again at _JPierce on Instagram, and I've got another image tutorial walkthrough for you guys. This one is called Up, and we've got a nice stone-looking staircase winding through the woods. Some leaves on the ground here, and foliage scattered around, and this nice light coming in from above. And so there's some pretty cool techniques in this one, and we're going to start with start by building out our little stairs here. And so let's jump right in. I've got Cinema open here with my Octane viewer ready to go. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a cube. And this is going to be our stair, and I'm going to leave it at 200 by let's say 20 by 60, and that seems to be about right. So I'm going to set the segments to 10 by 10 by 10, and let's look at it under hidden line. And I think I want more segments in the X direction. I'm going to square these out. 20, 30 maybe. Let's go up to 40. And that looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and break it apart. And I'm just going to, right off the bat, add a sculpting tag and subdivide it in additional time. Cool, and I'm going to switch back to Gerard now. And the brush I'm going to use for this is called Scrape, and the Scrape brush is great. It lets you just shear off these hard edges, and so I'm just going to go around very quickly with the Scrape brush. You can also try the Flatten brush, that'll work too. The Scrape brush works really great to just take off anything that's protruding. It does exactly what it sounds like. So we want to come around and just work on all these edges and get them look more organic looking and more rock-like, as if someone has come along with a chisel and taken this rock and shaped it into something that resembles a stair. And that looks pretty good right there. So pretty easy sculpt, one tool, didn't have to use a lot of different brushes to get this to look like a stone stair. So there we go. And so the texture I'm going to use is one that you guys can download for free from a site called 3dtextures.me. And the one I'm using here is called Rock 28, and you definitely want to consider buying this guy a coffee or becoming a patron, because these are free materials. And while I'm at it, I also have a patron that you could use to help support me. That would be great if you want to help to support me to keep going to make these tutorials. That would be awesome. In the future, there's going to be really cool perks for patrons. So I have this material downloaded already, and it's set up as an Octane material. And I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just turn off the displacement. So I just have the normal in there and the diffuse. And so I'm going to drop this onto our cube, and I think I probably want, two tiles in this direction. Maybe we want 3 tiles in this direction, and that'll work pretty good. And I want to leave this, have my normal map turned up to 2. Maybe we go higher and start to play with the, see, that's cool. Start to play with the scale on the normal map, so it doesn't necessarily have to line up. We just want to get some extra details in there for when we get our lighting set up. And speaking of lighting, let's drop in a daylight, and we'll go ahead and spin it around and check out what our rock is going to look like under different lighting conditions. And that looks pretty good. Let's make sure that we have this as a glossy material, and our specular is set down pretty far and our roughness is set up pretty high. So maybe I'm not liking that as much. We'll scale it back down some, just maybe in here somewhere. And I can toggle this and stretch it in different directions, independent of how I have my tiles set up, so that's nice too. So maybe something like that will work for our step. You know, there's all kinds of great resources for materials, but this is you know, this one is free, so you can use it to make a halfway decent looking stair here. So the next thing we're going to do is let's shut off this cube so that it's disabled here, and we'll grab a plane, and we're going to make our plane 4,000 by 4,000. We're going to do our main sculpt 4,000 by 4,000 by 200 by 200, and let's pull out our camera, and we just want to rise up a hill here, and so we're going to do that. We'll break it apart and use a pull brush and make it pretty large and pretty strong, and we'll just start making a little hill here for our stairs to live on. So let's see, a little higher, and something like this will probably work fine. And then I want to create a nice little pathway here for our stairs to live on and our pathway to live on. So I'm going to keep the pull brush for a second and make it pretty low. And by holding Control, I'll push in and just make a little pathway here. And then I'm going to use a wax brush that's a bit bigger and pretty light, and go over that line again. Maybe I need it harder, and holding Control, pushing down, and we'll go one more time with the pull again. And something like this will probably work fine, and we'll just use the wax to smooth it out so that we have a nice looking area for where our pathway is going to be. So if I come in with my camera and set up my output settings to 1080 by 1350, I can get a better idea of what my composition is going to look like. And while we're at it, I'll hit Shift V and change my view opacity. Tinted border is on view opacity to 75, so that I can get a better idea of where my composition is going to live. So I want something like right here, and maybe I need to lift up these areas some more. And this isn't going to matter too much, but you know, it's nice to have good coverage on either side if I decide I want a different camera angle. So I'll drop a camera right here, and then continue sculpting on here a little bit to lift up this area back here and this area back here. And now we've got a little rise in the woods that's gonna act as our area for where we want our stairs. So I'm gonna show you which material I used for the main forest floor, which is this RD forest leaves. and it's a great looking material. The folks at RD Textures really make some amazing photo scan materials, so I can't recommend them highly enough. And I'm also going to grab this rock number 15, and we're going to use these two, combine them together to get you know, really what it's going to be is mostly leaves on the forest floor, and then in this area here we're going to have some rocks jutting out to the side, and maybe along these sides we'll have some rocks jutting out. So we'll start with our leaves here. And they're way too large, so let's take it up to maybe 10 by 10 on the tiles. And let's bring in our go into where our camera is. And that's looking pretty good. Maybe I went too much, so 8 by 8. That's looking pretty good. And let's adjust our light again, because I want our light to be coming in sort of from back behind. And that looks pretty cool right there. And now I'm going to switch to hidden line and take a look at where my pathway is here. And I'm going to take off my camera, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a path where I want my stairs to be. So in a previous tutorial I showed you how to enable snap, polygon snap, turn off vertex snapping, and then with the sketch tool I can draw a path right on top of my landscape here. And so let's say I want it to be just about right there. And so now I have a spline that lives right on the surface of where I want my stairs to be. So all I have to do now is grab a cloner and drop my cube inside the cloner. I'll turn my cube back on. This is our stair. And I'm going to set the mode to object, and the object to be the spline. And off the bat, it doesn't look great. So what I really want is I want to turn off align clone, and now they're oriented correctly in space, but they're distributed in a really funky way. And so in order to fix this, you want to go to the spline and change the intermediate points to be uniform, or what do I want? Subdivided. And that will even out the intermediate points in between the main spline points. And so it looks like my stairs are a little too small, so that's an easy fix. All I have to do is scale them up. Oh, and they're not scaling because I have a sculpting tag on here. And you can, what you can do is just flatten it by just clicking on it and saying, you know, you can use currency to object and then do some other things, but I just connect objects and delete, and it will bake down all those subdivisions. So I'm going to scale it up a bit, and now I have my stairs nicely placed in here. And if I don't quite have enough, I can just go to the count and add a couple more. And I want to also add a random effector. And what I'm going to do with the random effector is just make very small, maybe 5 by 5 by 5 randomness, and it can go more in the X direction just to spread them out a little so it's not so uniform. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the rotation. Just tweak a little bit of rotation into each one so that I get a nice looking, you know, more organic shape on where these stairs are. So that's the basics for the staircase. Now let's take our light, and I'm going to show you one other trick. If we bring our light, you know, up over here, and then our camera is more like here, you're going to see that these are, each one is identical as it goes up. And so there's an effector you can use called the formula effector. And what you can do with this, I'm going to turn off those parameters and enable rotation, is, let's say I want to randomly on each step, I want to turn it 180 degrees. So I want to see either the front side, the back side, the left side, the front side. What you can do is use a formula called, well, let's see, it's round. So you want a round number, RND for a random number, 4. And I think I remembered that correctly. And then so it's going to generate a random value between 1 and 4. And then I want to have this be, I think, 180. Yeah. So 180, 180, and I don't want to affect that one. So now each one is rotating randomly. This works great for city blocks, for buildings, for anything where you have large grids of things and you want to rotate each one randomly 90 degrees, because if you use a random effector, they're all going to be different angles. But this works to restrict everything to 90 degree angles or 180 degree angles. So that's a cool little trick. So now I have each one sort of randomly in there, and now that I've got my spline there, my stairs there, I can go in, I can come back with the sculpting brush and refine where where these leaves are actually interacting with my staircase. So let's see, maybe I just want a little bit here, a little bit here, and then push down in the center a little more, because it's nice to have these kind of half buried by the leaves underneath in here and over here, and you get a nice organic look to this. So there's our stairway. That's the main that's really the main technique I really wanted to show you guys. So everything else here is going to be more of the same if you've watched my tutorials before, but we're going to duplicate our plane, and we're going to call this one rocks, and let's take this down to 3 by 3 and increase our displacement on our rocks by about 3 times what it is. And let's see if we can adjust our mid-level to push them down some more. Maybe somewhere in that range. And now I'm going to use sculpting brushes again to clear out in here. So we don't want any rocks on our path area. But it would be nice to keep some over here and over here, and keep some up here. So just blending these two together, we like to have some nice scattered rocks amongst our leaves, and maybe less right there, less right there. And you can even use all kinds of different sculpting tools for this to really, let's see, I ended up moving my camera. So you can use all kinds of different tools for this to sculpt the rocks in this in the forest, however you want them to look. And what I'm seeing now is I'd like this color to match this color, and so the way to do that is to just apply a color correction node into this tree under the diffuse. And it looks like there's a bit too much red in it, so we're going to shift it away from red by shifting the hue and shifting it towards green. And there we go. That looks pretty good. And maybe we need a bit more gamma and a little less saturation. So just tweaking those colors to get the rock to match a little bit better, a little bit more. There we go. So now the rock looks like it was taken from the surroundings to build this staircase, and that's definitely what we want. So our next step is to go in and add our vegetation. And in this particular scene, I'm going to show you a different way of adding the vegetation in. So I have a preset here for our vegetation. I have an octane scatter, and I'm going to apply the octane scatter. I'm going to use the leaves geometry as my surface for my octane scatter, and applied to my octane scatter I have a plane effector and a random effector, and the random effector is just rotating every plant 900 degrees randomly and scaling it a little bit. And then the plane effector, how I'm going to set it up is as a box. Okay, so this plane effector that I have here is going to just act as a limiter for where I want my plants to be. And this is just a really kind of quick and dirty way of setting up the scene in a way that is going to work, and it's going to be easy, it's going to be quick. It's not going to be super accurate. So all I've done is taken a box and said wherever this box is, I don't want there to be any plants. So now you can see that I have little plants over here and I have them over here, but there's none in the center, and that's because I've set up this plane effector to be -1 on the scale, and now it's just chopping out anything that's right in that range. And now I've got this thing right up in my face, and so I can go to the fall off and say visible, turn off visible. And so for my texture on my plants, I'm going to use a material called greenery, and it looks like this. This is a image from the Forester plugin, and I have it plugged into 2 color correction nodes with a random color, and it's piped into albedo, specular, and transmission on a universal material. So I'm going to drop that onto my plants, and let's see, we're going to grab a couple of cool plants that I really like. I really like this hairgrass, tufted hairgrass is a good one, and I have by accident enabled the default materials. I don't want these Forester materials, thank you. I want to use just this material, and I'm going to switch now to path tracing and set my samples to 350 and my GI clamp to 4. And let's go with a few more of these. Let's go up to 5,000. And let's decrease the scale of this guy about half. Maybe too small there. Cool, and I'm going to duplicate him, and I'm going to bring in another one that I love, this leaf grass. Leaf grass looks really cool, And I'm going to make some modifications to this leaf grass. I'm going to go to the stems tab and increase the stem spread and the stem spread random. And I'm also going to increase the stem length by quite a bit. And I'm probably going to increase the size of this one too. Cool, and now I think my camera position is just a little off. I feel like something in here is a bit nicer. But these the plants are looking very nice in the foreground, and maybe I can artistically come in and bring up some more of our rock here. And I'm not really liking that area of that texture, so one of the things you can do is change these offsets. That's better. And it'll just give you a different, it'll just shift the entire texture over, and it'll give you a different look inside there. And I think I want a little bit less rock up on top, because I want these leaves to be very visible. There should be more exposed rock where the slope is deeper, but up here where the slope is less, I don't want there to be quite as much rock. So a little less right there. And so now I'm going to duplicate my scatter. And I'm going to delete the contents and go to plugins and forester tree. And I'm going to use the Aralia tree. And I only want about 10 of these. And they're far too large. And I want to apply my leaf material to the tree, to its leaf parameter. And I need to increase the viewport levels to 5. And maybe it's a little small. So that's neat, but this one is too this one's too close to the camera. So easy fix, we're going to go in and change the seed value until we get something that looks nice. The idea here is that we build from the ground up. We start with the leaves and the floor, then we add the undergrowth, and then we add the next level up in trees, and then we add the next level up in trees. Maybe I need a few more. Alright, that's nice. That looks pretty neat. So we're going to duplicate again, go to our tree, and for these trees I'm going to use a mangrove tree, and I'm going to make a couple more modifications to this one. I need it to be fairly large and maybe even a little bigger, and then I want to extend out these branches by increasing the branch lengths on each of these levels. And then I want to increase the trunk height by in the trunk parameters about to here. So cool. Now I want the normal line to be all the way down to almost 0, so that my trees stay nice and straight up and down. and then I want to increase my tree parameters to viewport levels of 5. And then I'm going to apply my leaf material to my mangrove tree. And we're looking pretty great now. So let's go up to 30 trees and start modifying the seed. Okay, awesome. I like this a lot. And now I'm going to duplicate my scatter one more time. Do a quick save and take a landscape, a generic Cinema 4D landscape. I want to drag it back here. I need to turn off snapping because I still have snap on. So, and then I'm just going to create a nice backdrop of trees back here by applying my landscape to my new duplicated Octane scatter and doubling this number to 60 and maybe even more, 80. And now I want to increase the height of my landscape some more and push it up some. And I'm going to use my leaf texture to texture my landscape, just so that anything back here will not look so out of place. Now I'm going to duplicate this random again and apply a second random effector to my background scatter. And the second random effector, I'm going to go to the scale and just change the Y scale to like 0.8. And now you can see I have some more tucked in below and some up higher because it's affecting the Y scale so much. So I'm digging this composition, I'm not digging the lighting, so let's get our light and start trying to find a place where we can get some good light coming down. That looks cool. And so now all I'm going to do is take a fog volume, and under the generate tab, start by setting this to 900, and we can use 6,000. Well, we don't need it that high, maybe 5,000 by 5,000 by 5,000. And then I want white under my scattering medium. And then I want to decrease it down and turn up the scattering and turn up the volume step and bring it down some more. And then I want to push it back away from the camera some more. So now we get this neat light coming down. And I'm going to duplicate my Aurelia scatter. And I'm also going to apply that. I'm also going to apply it to the landscape in back. And I'm going to increase this to maybe 100. And these are going to be too small, so we'll bring them up in size. And this way I just get a nice fill in the background to fill in the rest of those gaps back there. So that's looking pretty sweet. And then I think I took a light here and rotated it sideways and did some nice fill light just by bringing a light over here and scaling it up. And then I like to set the temperature down pretty far and decreasing the power to maybe something in there. That's just to bring out some more of the details and some more of the fill. And that's basically it, you guys. I think maybe this was a shorter one, and I'm happy to say that I'm glad that you followed along with me creating this stairway nature scene. In the end, you know, I added some color correction and some more light, but that's really the basic idea there. So thank you all again so much for watching. Please like and subscribe my videos. Consider becoming a patron on my Patreon account, and happy rendering. Can't wait to see what you guys make with this. Thanks again.